Okay, over to you.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, everyone, for being here today for our KnowledgeXChange panel. I'm Liz Pohland, STC CEO, and I'm the moderator. And today's session is titled, Should I Become a Techcom Contractor or Consultant? And we will focus on defining contracting, freelancing, consulting, the pros and cons of each, and resources for becoming an independent contractor. I'm joined today by Erin Galilee, STC Director of Operations, Membership, and Community Relations, and our distinguished panelists, who I'm going to introduce each person who's joined us today. Erin, would you start the poll that we had ready to go? While I read the introductions, I thought it'd be helpful for the panelists to know who's in the room. So we're going to run a poll while you're listening to more information about our panels. So Kit Brown-Hoekstra is an award-winning writer, speaker, and consultant, an STC fellow, and former STC president. As principal of Comgenesis LLC since 2003, Kit provides consulting and training to her clients on a variety of topics, including technical communication, localization, content strategy, and content operations, so that they can better serve their customers wherever they live and work. She speaks at conferences and worldwide, publishes regularly in industry magazines. She co-authored a book on managing virtual teams in 2007, and in 2017 edited The Language of Localization. Welcome, Kit. Lori Corbett is a product content designer at Vertex Inc., a tax-compliant software and services company. Although she is currently working as a company employee, she was a contractor consultant from 1990 through 2002. As a dedicated user advocate, Lori provides clear documentation and training deliverables to empower financial and technical software users whose work requires them to use various applications. With a degree in economics, she has been a technical writer, editor, instructional designer, and trainer since 1988. STC awarded Lori with the honor of Associate Fellow in 2008, and from 2009 to 2012, she served on the STC Board of Directors. And last but certainly not least is Paula Robertson, who is a veteran of 27 years in technical communication. She has practiced her craft of quality documentation in a variety of industries that include air, sea, rail, transportation, telecommunications, pharmaceuticals, civil engineering, defense, and STEM education. Paula became an accidental entrepreneur in 2006 after a layoff. Her first contract opportunity was a 1099 position that lasted a year and a half. From that experience, Paula decided that she liked being her own boss, mostly staying above the fray of corporate politics. For 9 years, Paula worked exclusively on contracts using the business name Fine Lines. 7 years ago, she succumbed to the allure of a steady workflow and paycheck and took a full-time job with her largest client. Paula is now poised to jump back into her next opportunity and likely back into the realm of contracting. So thank you all for being here today. I appreciate it. I'm amazed by the years and length of your expertise in this area. It's wonderful. After looking at the poll briefly, it's interesting to see who's here. So we have a lot of new members and some really long-time members, which is great to have both kinds of experience in the audience. We have people who have been involved with TechCom for 1 to 5 years, but quite a few that have been involved for many years. And then there's some other questions about things they're interested in for future panels. We also have people who are students and professionals, so a really diverse group of people today. So I think that's helpful to know. So we can stop sharing that, Erin. So let's get started. Panelists, I know I've given a brief introduction, but if you would each also provide a little bit more information about why you got into self-employment or contracting to begin with. And Lori, I will start with you.
Oh, lucky me. So I'm Lori Corbett, and I have moved up and down the East Coast through the years. I've been a member of STC for 34 years. And when I first started, I actually came to tech writing from being a typesetter back in the olden days before word processing, when typesetting was done on film. And then I worked at a company that did a lot of work, documentation work, TechCom work for IBM. And as things would come across my desk for typesetting, I was constantly fixing it because there were so many errors, grammatical and otherwise. And then they had an editing class, and I took the editing class, and believe it or not, I did score the highest in the company. So therefore I said, I'm in the wrong place, move me. So they did move me. They moved me already all the way over to being an editorial assistant. I'm like, that's not good enough. I gave them 6 months. They didn't promote me. And I said, I'm going to figure it out on my own. And I had already joined STC. And STC was an excellent place. This was in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I did a lot of networking. I had no problems getting little positions here, there, and I really liked it. And the other thing I really liked about it was that my husband wanted to travel. And between contracting gigs, we could take trips. So we did a lot of trips, a lot of cruising. Over the course of 41 years, my husband and I did 24 cruises and 311 days. So it fulfilled many purposes. So I think that's enough for now.
I'm sure we'll learn more and more as we go along, but that's great. Thank you. Paula, how about you? How'd you get started with what you call entrepreneurship?
The short answer is by accident, which you mentioned. I had looked into contracting and I was encouraged to by someone who had done it before, but it scared me because I only have my income and it seemed like a real risk when I really wasn't familiar with how it worked. But as Liz read, I had one of my many layoffs in 2006. I was let go on a Friday and I started a contract on Wednesday because things just lined up. Happened to be with a former employer where I'd been for 9 years. And like I said, I enjoyed being my own boss, basically, even though 1099, I had to pay my own taxes, but it paid better than the salary job had paid. So yeah, it was, I got into it and then I stayed in it.
Great, thanks, Paula. And Kit?
Well, in 2002, I got laid off from Lionbridge, where I'd been working as a consultant, teaching people how to create global ready content. And I took 6 months to just figure out what my next step was going to be. I knew at the time I wanted to stay in Boise, Idaho, which is where I was living, and I loved it there. But there were, it's a small town, it's a small city, so there aren't a lot of options for employment. And I talked to people like Linda Gallagher and Paula Berger and Judy Glick-Smith and Mary Wise and Linda Ostrike, and they all were super encouraging of going out on my own, and Donna Saxon, Joanne Hackos, all of those guys were very, very supportive of me starting my own company. So I did. And Paula and Linda were my first clients. And then I just grew from there. And now my biggest client right now is Cruz Sanders' company, Simple A, where I do content operations consulting and digital transformation consulting, do a lot of training workshops and just client workshops to help them move forward with their transformation dreams. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Sounds good. And you've hit on a couple things that I know is going to come up quite a bit in this session, is that A, you need a network to do this well, and B, having a support team as well, and people who are behind you and mentoring you. I think that's also great. So before we get too deep into pros and cons of each area, I think, in case people aren't really familiar with the world of self-employment, perhaps we ought to start with some definitions. I know there are a lot of terms that go around self-employment: independent contractor, freelancer, consultant. Perhaps each of you could take one of those and give us a bit of a definition. Kit, let's start with you this time. Why don't you define freelancing?
Well, freelancing is basically you are submitting articles or work to usually to a magazine or a book type thing. Often it's a side gig if you're freelancing. a lot of freelancers don't necessarily consider themselves business owners, right? Although they are, because they're doing 1099 work. But it's more gig oriented rather than project oriented. So
I think that's good. Thank you. Lori, let's talk about independent contractors. How would you do-
Independent contractors get to do 1099s. So you don't use your personal social security number, you use your 99 numbers or 56 numbers, I guess they were. It's been a while since I've used it. And you get to basically charge by the hour or even charge by the contract, but you get to also take a lot of deductions. And when I was doing independent contracting, I was doing it before we were required to get health insurance. So I never bothered with health insurance, and I didn't need it, luckily, so we were good. But the independent contractor is, just as it says, independent and not reliant on the company. And as an independent contractor, you might be working on several different projects for different companies, as long as you can figure it out in your schedule, because it's all your schedule.
Right. Thank you. And Paula, how about the idea of a consultant or an entrepreneur business owner?
Well, that's the one I have the least experience with. And I would just like to mention that these terms have a lot of overlap.
Right.
And there's differences in the way they are interpreted. In fact, most of my contracts have been W-2s, especially if you work for the government, they're going to insist on it, and you get the paid holidays and everything. But consulting is, I think of that, you don't have so much of a product deliverable. I'm thinking as, I don't know what you would call it, more focused on an outcome or training or a change in behavior, that kind of thing. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and I think Kit probably has something she wants to say related, but in my mind, I'm thinking you're giving some of your expertise and your advice about something they don't have.
Right.
right. I would say the difference between an independent contractor and a consultant is there are two things. One is that consulting tends to be more process oriented rather than product deliverable oriented. There are deliverables as part of that, reports and presentations and training and that kind of thing, but it's not like, here's a product that we're trying to get out the door. Typically it's we're changing the way we're doing things, right? So that it tends to be you tend to be working at a different level in the organization. You tend to be working with directors and C-level, whereas when you're doing contracting, you're working with the technical people who are actually creating the products. Typically, this isn't, again, as Paula said, there's overlap,
Right.
and same thing with freelancing too. It's just,
All right. So if we also look at being independent, why would a technical communicator in particular perhaps choose to become one? And I'll go around, maybe each of you could provide a benefit or two of why contracting or being an independent or self-employed is a good way to go. Paula, let's start with you.
Good, because I'm going to copy what Lori said. It's the flexibility and the ability, you can work or not work, depending on whatever else you want to do and whether you need to work. But there's, the flexibility with your time. So I'll stop there.
Okay, Lori, you want to add on?
Oh, of course. The other thing it gives you is when you do a contract and then you go on to another contract and then to another contract, frequently, sometimes with the same employer or sometimes with a new person, you get to meet new people, you get to do new things, you get to learn about more and more things. It gave me such a wide variety of skills and technologies to know. You have to be a lifelong learner to do it, I think.
Yeah,
So of course I had something to add.
Yeah, that's a great benefit. And Kit, what's a benefit you can think of?
Well, besides the flexibility and the variety, I would say that you get to determine your path. You know, there is no one telling you what to do or how to do it. You have to figure it out on your own. And I mean, there's, you know, obviously support people to help you, but it's totally self-directed, and it's up to you, and which is awesome and scary and difficult all at the same time.
Which of course leads me right into my next question, which is what are the disadvantages of being independent or self-employed? And of course, one of them I always think of is if you're not a driven person and not able to promote yourself or, you know, take your work seriously on your own, that could be a serious drawback.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah,
or
go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say the biggest disadvantage, especially if you are a independent consultant with either a zero staff or small staff, is that you're the chief cook and bottle washer. You're the accountant, you're the marketing person, you're the salesperson, you're the web designer, you're the you know, and a lot of that stuff can often get in the way of actually doing the work that you really love. And it's stressful because the cash flow is not always even unless you have a steady client, you know.
Yeah. Lori, how about a disadvantage that you can think of?
Well, I'm going to go to the personality thing. I think I'm not a typical technical communicator because I'm an extrovert. I'm like the definition of an extrovert, and I realize that. But many of us are introverts, and they might find it more difficult to go into new clients and become part of the team, whatever team that is. And it's for some people, I think that would be a challenge. For me, it was a joy.
Makes sense. Paula, what about you? Disadvantage?
Well, I'll turn that around a little bit. If you're not good at time management and driving yourself to get things done, this is probably not going to be a good fit. Like Kit mentioned, there's the up and down nature of your income, and you really need to be good at saving, and you need to plan for those down times. And if you can't do that, it's not going to be a good fit, or not for long. So yeah, you have to be comfortable with the uncertainty. So I'm telling you positive, negative things, but anyway, saying them in a positive way. If you don't have these skills, it's probably not a good fit.
Right. Makes sense. So we have a question in the chat that leads to a question I was going to ask you all anyway. So I think we'll just address Margaret's question, which is, would being a contractor be good for newer technical communicators? Or would you recommend newer technical communicators find a conventional job first? What do you think? Lori?
Well, I've already told you, I was pretty new at doing technical communication because I had been a typesetter. But I did have that good basic knowledge of how to write and good grammar and that kind of thing. So I did start out as an early career in Techcom to do the contracting work. I can't speak to, I'm thinking it might have been more difficult for some, but for me, since I had a good basic background, it was okay.
Okay. Kit, I think I saw you raise your hand. Do you have something to add?
Well, yeah, I would say it depends on the level of experience you already have working in the world. If you've never had a job in an office, jumping right into contracting or being a consultant is going to be very difficult for you, because the way that people work in an office situation versus, say, retail or other survival jobs you might have had in, restaurants, is very, very different. And I would say that was the biggest adjustment for me, because I came from a veterinary background. And so I was trying to get into vet school. So all my jobs were working with animals in a clinical situation, not in an office situation. And that the office way of working is very, very different. Also, if you have never done technical communication, you need a mentor. The world, it's not just about writing and editing or graphic design anymore. There's so much to the technology, the content management, knowing how to structure and design information and content in a way that it can be used by multiple audiences is super important. And if you don't have those skills, then you need somebody to help you learn those skills, either through coursework or through job experience. And if you don't have business skills, it's very difficult to succeed as a small business. So you need to look at your skill. I guess what I'm saying is you need to look at your skill set and decide what skills where are the skill gaps. Do a really clear-eyed analysis of your abilities and your current skills before you make that decision.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I also know we get a lot of times a question from people who are transitioning from other areas and may have some overlap in some of the skills, but they often ask us, they may be having trouble finding their first time full-time job, and they want to get a little bit of experience, under their belt. Would contracting or a small freelance job be one of the ways you would recommend that people do that? Paula, or Lori's got her hand up. Let me start with Lori, and then I'll come back to Paula.
If you're having trouble finding a job or finding a contract, volunteer. Do something that will build your resume in whatever way. Because I did a lot of that when I first started too. I mean, I have my degree in economics. I have a good, solid educational background, but I volunteered so that I could, in a way, prove that I knew what technical writing was about. And it worked.
Yeah, and I think there's a question in the chat right now about, do you need a master's degree? Do you need a certification? You know how I'm going to answer the certification. Of course, it helps. It will always help your resume and what you have to offer if you can show that you're very skilled in the area. Paula, do you want to add something to this?
Volunteering is always a really good answer. There are many organizations, nonprofits, who could use somebody to do their newsletter.
Right.
Just small little projects like that. So there's a lot of opportunities out there if you think about it.
Yeah, and I know when I was in school, when I was getting my PhD, we did a lot of service courses. So one of the projects at the end of the course would be to have a hands-on project that we delivered to a real client. And it was something as simple as redesigning the documentation for someone's prosthetics at a doctor's office or whatever. It was real work that we could add to our resumes. We didn't get paid for it, but we learned a lot. And I think that anything like that you can add to your resume would certainly help. Kit, do you want to add to this question?
Yeah, sure. So I would say you don't necessarily need a master's degree. I have one because I came from a different field. My bachelor's degree is in biology, so I wanted to learn how to be a good technical communicator before I started working, because most of my work also is in life sciences and medical. I would say that if you have an area that you are passionate about, if you love music, focus on something related to the music industry, whether it's music software or music, music hardware. Focus on something that you're passionate about. If you love gaming, focus on gamification or those kinds of things, so you can segue the skills that you already have and interests that you already have, and it helps to focus it, because every product, process, and service on this planet and off of it has a technical communicator behind it. And so part of the challenge with finding a job in TechCom is that they're often hidden. And if you don't have a lot of contacts because you're new to the field, you need to build your network. You need to join STC. You need to go to chapter chapter or community meetings. You need to join book clubs that are related to that. You need to volunteer. It builds your network, because you just never know when you're going to meet someone who can help you move forward in your career. And take classes early in your career. Your job should be adding as many skills as possible to your resume, because the more skills you have, the more hireable you are. And particularly if you have both graphics and writing, or video and writing, that's huge right now, especially because more and more companies are going toward video and AR and VR.
And would you also recommend that people read sort of job descriptions or project proposals to find out what areas they may have, but also what they may need to brush up on?
Yes, and I would also say that's also looking at what keywords you need to use in your resume and because a lot of resumes are being uploaded to these systems that are looking for keywords, and if your keywords don't match the job ad, they just ignore you, right? So yeah, I would say definitely you need to look at the job ads. You need to talk to people, network with people, do informational interviews. I'm a big proponent of that. I think I did an article a few years ago in Intercom about that very topic, actually, about how to do an effective informational interview. And I think that would be a good thing to do as well.
Great. We have another question in the chat that I'll pose to you all. How did you determine if self-employment was right for you compared to being employed? Did you run into any unexpected barriers when you started? Anybody want to answer that?
I could start with something.
Hey, Lori.
When I first started, okay, I'm going to put my age right out there. I graduated college in 76. So it was a long time ago. And when I went to start doing technical writing with different companies, basically they didn't know what a technical writer was in those days. So I want to go back to answer the question about getting more degrees or getting certification. I would say today, if I were just starting today, I would definitely get certified. Since I've been doing it for 34 years, I don't think I need to go through that hassle. So I'm not doing it, but I would highly recommend it for somebody who's new, because the certification gives you a better variety of ways to do things. And there's every place you go, it's a different way, it's a different tool. The other thing is I graduated with a degree in economics, and I had a lot of math and a lot of engineering. So I have basically 90% of my work has been in finance. So I have stuck with finance and I enjoy it. I mean, it's what I majored in. So that was helpful too. So, where is your passion, as Kit said, follow your passion and stick with it, and it'll work out for you, I'm sure.
Anybody else want to answer that question about what made you realize you were going to be good at contracting, and were there any barriers, Kit?
Well, getting laid off when you're single in your 30s, and I guess what made me realize I needed to be self-employed was when I cried after an interview that went very well and they offered me the job, and I started crying because I just did not want to do that. It felt like a step backward. And I'm not a big crier, so it was like, yeah, that was kind of an epiphany for me. I would also say that you need that part of being a good technical communicator is curiosity. And, sometimes there are very few decisions you can't unmake. If try it, and if it doesn't work out for you, then you can always go back to working for somebody else, and vice versa. You can keep working for someone else while you're building those skills. I did a lot of side gigs before, and experimentation before I went off fully on my own.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I have a question I want to ask all of you, which is about how things have changed since the pandemic started for contractors. I read an article on LinkedIn recently called "The 5 Reasons to Become Your Own Boss." And it said that the market for freelancing was stronger than ever, and that due to the pandemic, thousands leaving their jobs, this great resignation we're going through, was causing some of this. So what do you all think about that? And in fact, the article said that a third of the US workforce is moving in this direction. Do you think that's true for technical communicators? And what does that mean since the pandemic? Paula, let's start with you.
I know I'm not real in touch with the job market, but I know all of the leads that have reached out to me, or most of them, have been contract. So that might be all you can find. Employers, I'm sure, are hesitant to take on the burden of a full-time employee if they're not sure about their own health, corporate health. But you see that in all kinds of times. I don't have a good finger on the impact of the pandemic.
That's fair. Lori or Kit, do you have thoughts on this?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I would say that, well, I've worked from home since 2002, so really hasn't affected my work life that much in terms of client contacts, in terms of, how many online meetings I'm doing and things like that. But for somebody transitioning from an office to virtual, there are a lot of, that's a whole nother conversation, is how you do that. Because even after 2 years, I'm finding some clients are just really bad at it, working from home. They need that office situation. I think the biggest thing that it's changed is how we network. Most of my business prior to the pandemic came from conference speaking engagements and networking events. I haven't done a lot of those since the pandemic. And so now I'm finding myself needing to be more intentional about how I network and how I market my business. I also have not written as many articles as I usually do because of that. And it's, I think we have to acknowledge the trauma of the pandemic for a lot of people. All these people who are mostly white men saying, oh yeah, just go and do these creative things. They aren't moms with little kids at home while they're trying to do a full-time job. They're not trying to do everything plus school plus work, and it's changed the way that we have to approach our work. I think it's also highlighted the need for universal healthcare in this country. Because I think that is one thing that stops a lot of people from becoming entrepreneurs, is the need for healthcare and the need for retirement benefits. I'm married now, but when I started doing freelance, I was single, and it was, even as a healthy 30-something, it was costing me $400 or $500 a month for insurance that was basically catastrophic level insurance. It would cover me if I had emergency surgery, but it wouldn't, I couldn't get like regular dental work or anything like that. I had to save for that. So that's also something to think about as you are, if you are just going into the self-employment, do you have a nest egg that you can support yourself on while you're getting started? And if not, then you probably want to do a side gig first. You want to ease into it as a side gig, and then only when you're getting busy enough and getting consistent enough work and have consistent enough clients, go off on your own. Don't screw yourself by being too being unprepared financially, which I was, because I wasn't planning on getting laid off and I had just bought a house. So If it hadn't been for my grandmother, I would not have survived those 6 months.
Well, I'm glad you brought up insurance too, because I know at one point, that was considered one of the benefits for being employed by an employer, was that you had these benefits that came along with the position. But as employers have also been struggling with the pandemic, some of them have taken some of those benefits away or not paying full health insurance, and it comes out of your paycheck. So it's not always the way it has always been. Lori, do you want to add to this discussion about how things have changed since the pandemic?
Well, as I said earlier, when I became freelance consultant, whatever I want to call myself, I didn't get health insurance, but basically I don't need health insurance. I'm, knock wood, one of the healthier people you've ever met. But then, as I said, as when I got older, I was, getting almost 50. I said, maybe I should get health insurance. And I went and found a regular job. It was quite a pay cut. I had been doing really well with jobs. One thing I have to say, we haven't really mentioned it, is network, network, network. Don't hold back that you're looking for a gig. I've told this to Liz before. I had a friend in New York who was walking down the street talking to her friends. She said, I have a friend who's a technical writer and she can't find work. This was right after 9/11. And a stranger tapped her on the shoulder and gave her his information. He was looking for a technical writer. It turned out to be a very nice gig at Computer Associates. So be open.
Right. And I've noticed even on LinkedIn, we talked about this earlier, Lori, that you can add things to your picture or to your profile to suggest that you're open to work. And when I've gone online to look for people to do things for STC even, I'm always impressed when I see people who've got that circle around their face that lets you know right off the bat that they're looking for work and that they're open to it. And that leads me to another question I have for you guys is, how do you find the work as a contractor? Are there networks? Are there places you go to research, and also connected to this, how do you put yourself out there on the market? Paula, I saw you come off of mute, so I'm going to start with you.
Well, it's similar to how you get any job, and to piggyback on what Lori said is, don't discount any of your acquaintances or friends or family, because you don't know where that next opportunity is going to come from. You don't know who knows who. And also, I've been through so many layoffs when I had, a secure job, and I would be embarrassed to let people know that I was looking, especially because it seemed to be so frequent. And especially at church, people say, "Are you working?" It's like, that's how they identified me, as always being out of work. But you have to get over that. You have to let people know that you're looking, and just tell everybody. I don't know of any particular places to go besides STC. STC was really important to me. I've gotten a number of jobs through the job bank or through people I knew at our Dallas chapter. So that's a huge one right there. But also, when you connect with somebody on LinkedIn, keep up that connection, because it could be down the road when they have a need for somebody like you.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I know it's really easy to just keep building your network and adding people, but if you don't actually foster those relationships, they're not as valuable. Kit, I saw you lift your hand up.
So when, I guess I have a little bit different perspective on it, because it's not like job hunting, like when you're trying to find a full-time position. I think when you're an independent contractor, it's a little more like that. But as a consultant, I'm always marketing myself. I'm always, every decision I make about my business has to do with, how is this going to help me build, gain a client? What is the sales cycle? These are things that you have to think about when you're a small business owner. What is the sales cycle? In Techcom, it can be 18 months to 3 years. So you have to constantly be fostering those relationships. I wrote an article for Multilingual, and literally 5 years later, somebody called me and asked me to do a workshop based on that article. 5 years after I'd written that article. So you have to, as Jack Molisani is always saying, you're always sending ships out. You're always, even when you are very, and it's maybe even especially when you are very busy with actual paying work, you need to be still marketing yourself and participating. And I will also say, as a plug to STC, that every job that I have gotten has been a direct result of relationships I've built in STC. It has been, bar none, the best organization I've ever belonged to.
Oh, yay.
So,
Go kid.
and I'm not just saying that because I'm a past president.
No,
So,
you've been a long-time member, so I know that you've been.
I've been a member since '89. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Lori, do you want to add anything? No? Okay. So one of my last questions that I always ask with these panels is, now that you've admitted to being longtime members, is what member benefit do you think individuals who are either members already or maybe about to join should start with if they're thinking about independent contracting? I know early on in the chat, we had a message from the leaders of the independent contracting special interest group. So obviously, I'll take that one for myself. That's an obvious place. If you become a member, you might want to join that special interest group. All of our special interest groups at STC have Slack channels now, where they communicate and talk about the topics of the day for that different special interest. But are there other things that you use? I know a couple of you mentioned the job bank, networking, things that you would recommend people use with their membership, or that you used, or that is just your favorite STC benefit? Kit.
Well, I've been a mentor on the mentor board since its inception, and I get probably 3 to 5 people every year asking me at various levels of their career, asking for advice. There are a lot of us out there who are quite willing and happy to spend an hour or two talking to you about what your goals are, what your career path are, and help you identify help you do that gap analysis if you need to. I've had fewer people contact me since the pandemic, but I think that's one. I think that the communities, the chapters and the SIGs are awesome for networking. Volunteering to help out with a workshop, with to present to a chapter or a community meeting. Don't expect, you get out what you give to STC and any organization, really. Every one of us has skills and abilities. Like some people are better at social media maybe than some of the other members. And so doing a presentation on how to maximize your social media, or a workshop where you help people maximize their social media, that's a great way to showcase your skill set and also network with people, right? That's just one example. I do a lot of talks on localization because that's what I've been doing for a long time. I also do talks on medical writing because I've also been doing that for a long time. So, getting started, think about how you can contribute. Can you write an article for Intercom? Can you write a blog post? Can you, can you, there's so many different ways. Take some classes. If you are new to TechCom, take Leah Guerin's TechCom 101 boot camp. Yep. She's awesome. She's the best trainer I have ever worked with.
Yep, and her class is always full. And we offer it four times a year, so it is very popular. So Lori and Paula, did she leave anything else?
Yes.
Oh, good. Go, Paula.
I need to put in a plug for the solo technical communicator SIG that I facilitate. We used to be called Lone Writer, and we have a lot in common with the independent consulting contracting group because we're kind of both like on our own. And we do have monthly meetings of I call it the STC SIG, where we just come on and chat for an hour. And actually, I call it group therapy, because we talk about anything and everything. It doesn't have to be work related. But if someone has a question, has an issue, has something going on that they would like advice about, people are very willing to jump in and give their take on things. And so to me, these kind of groups are a lifeline, or a phone a friend, kind of thing. So that's what I've gotten the most out of in STC.
Yeah, and I would say what I hear a lot as CEO is that STC is a safe place to share ideas, to talk to other people, to show, your insecurities and talk it through. Everyone is extremely welcoming. And that's one of the nice things about being a member. Lori, do you have anything to add to this? You're muted.
I was on mute. Bed me. I want to respond to Shireen's question about how do you find your niche? Well, did you go to college? Was there some area there that suited you? Have you been working elsewhere in a related field that might need communication development? This is how you find what you're good at. Yeah, have you volunteered anywhere that maybe you could build out on that and make it a real contract job? And the other thing is, don't be afraid to go take a contract. I've had many contracts where I got offered a real job, a regular job with benefits. Afterwards, I never took it because I kept traveling. But where I work now, we just had a whole team of contractors, and I think we had 7 or 8 contractors doing a project that needed to be done, and just, we needed more hands on deck. And after that was finished, we hired 3 of them because they were the cream of the crop. So I just wanted to, hopefully that'll help Shireen a little bit.
Yeah, so just to recap, Shireen's question was, technical writing is such a broad skill with diverse applications across other disciplines. Do we start out with our niche, our passion, as Kit had suggested doing, or do we look more widely to be safe? And I think that's helpful. Kit or Paula, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say that when you focus on your niche, you actually find more opportunities, because when you're doing the scattershot approach, it's harder to pay attention to things. It's like if you buy a red car, every red car you notice every red car on the road, right? If you are focusing on what you do want, not on what you don't want, so what the type of opportunity you do want, that's what you will find more of, because that's what you're focusing on. You're focusing your subconscious on. And I would also say that one of the mistakes that women particularly make is, if we don't meet 120% of the requirements of a job, we tend not to apply for it. Men, if they meet 1% of the job, they will often apply for it. So to a certain extent, it's a numbers game, but also if there is a skill that you have, there are ways of talking about that skill. And so that even if you only meet 50% of the requirements of that, I have gotten jobs where I literally only met 50% of what was in the job ad, because also keep in mind that a lot of those job ads are written by HR and not about what the technical manager that you'd be working with is going to need. So I would definitely just learn to read between the lines in what a key skill in consulting is learning to answer the question, that answer their need, not necessarily what they're asking for. Right? Because a lot of times clients don't actually know what they need. So being able to ask good questions is really key. Warren Berger, A More Beautiful Question, is a great book to learn about that. And The Power of Appreciative Inquiry is also a good book for that, for learning how to do that.
Yeah, I think those are great books too. I've read both of those. I think there's something else to be said about looking for jobs or looking for opportunities in your niche, is that you're going to be happier when you do get a job because it's something you're comfortable with, your confidence is higher. And then something I always argue and tell people to do is to toot your own horn. The things that you know how to do well, you need to put out there and really let people know about, because no one else is going to tell people about them better than you can. And so I think, all the advice we've gotten today has been wonderful. I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. If there are any short questions anybody would like to ask before we head off and let all our wonderful panelists go about the rest of their workday and continue their contract work that they've, I'm sure, got piling up. But thank you all for attending. I appreciate all the questions from the audience. It's been a very engaged group and great questions that you all asked. And Lori, Paula, and Kit, thank you so much for your time today. I know Erin has some closing words to provide, and I would like to thank her as well for running the scenes, behind the scenes. So Erin, I'll pass it to you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, great. Well, thanks to all of our panelists again. Thank you all for all of your work today and answering a lot of these questions. I've been placing a lot of links into the chat as we've been going along about STC programs and just places on our website that you can find more information and how to connect to us and how to connect to our panelists. I would encourage you to view the recording afterwards. It should be on our website a little bit later today. It's in the KnowledgeXChange section of our website where you found the link perhaps to come to this program. And you'll also find other programs connected to many of the other tips that have been mentioned here about networking, volunteering, about certification and degrees and the necessity there. So please take advantage of our recordings. They're there, they're open, completely open to the public and free for you to view and to share with others as well. So I recommend doing that. And here on our website is just quick links of just how to reach out to us. If you come up with questions later, please feel free to reach out to either Liz or myself or any of our panelists through LinkedIn. You can also connect to us via social media, via these main social media networks that we have available here in our Slack workspace. There are channels there where you can connect to KnowledgeXChange, to volunteer opportunities, and just meeting not only these panelists, but other panelists involved in former KnowledgeXChange programs, as well as just our wonderful STC membership. So I encourage you to get plugged in, and I would encourage you to come back and visit us again for future panel discussions that take place each final Monday of the month at 1 p.m. in our member meetups, where it's just an opportunity the second week of each month to meet other members like yourself, either new to STC or new to TechCom, to meet others like yourself and more seasoned members to communicate and build your networking team. So again, thank you for coming today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Erin.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Everybody.